Welcome to Mr. Foy's Easel. I'm going to draw 2 or 3 cartoons that some of you may recognize. And the reason I'm drawing these cartoons that were created by somebody else is I want to talk and draw about devices that cartoons use to keep their comic strip or animated cartoons or whatever going. Now this is supposed to be Wile E. Coyote. I'll talk more about him in just a minute in connection with today's theme. Now this next one, I'm pretty sure most of you will recognize him. And I'm going to draw him with about the same kind of expression as I have for the coyote. And for those of you who are not familiar with the old-time cartoons, this is supposed to be Donald Duck. And if I draw this anywhere close to correctly, just about everybody will see that I'm trying to portray that famous Peanuts character, the little beagle dog named Snoopy. Now, to elaborate more on what I said at the beginning about themes that cartoonists use for their animated productions or their comic strips, Wile E. Coyote was an optimist in that he always thought he could catch the Roadrunner. He was a loser in that he never did. And of course, another element in those cartoons about the coyote is his ability to purchase equipment, dynamite, and all kinds of things to try to catch the Roadrunner. So that was a current thing. There were several current things about the Wile E. Coyote. And Donald Duck, he wasn't always this way, but it is true that in the Donald Duck comics, he was pretty high-tempered, and sometimes he would yak away. In the case of Snoopy, there are several things that occur time and again. First of all, his bird friend, Woodstock, shows up. A dog and a bird as best friends. That's a recurring theme. And I don't need to remind you, I guess, that Snoopy is on his doghouse resting or maybe sleeping or maybe, of all things, typing. Well, in the case of cartoon critters, all through my series on Mr. Foy's Easel, I've pointed out how we like to take animals, birds, things like that, and give them human attributes or human ability, like the ability to talk or to drive a car or to type or whatever. Now, to digress a little bit, but to get on to a pursuit of my main theme about what cartoonists use time and again to try to evoke laughter. Years ago, I took part in the creation of a cartoon strip which appeared in the local newspaper for a couple of years. The title of it was Bugs and Birds, and in this strip we also had other kind of critters, but we did have a lot of bugs and birds. And I want to start out here to show you one of the cartoons that involved bugs or a bug. I'm going to try to draw a round figure here. Just so you'll know what it is, I want to write 25 cents on it. That's a quarter, yes. And in one of our strips, this bug was pushing this quarter down the sidewalk. And he was huffing and puffing, and it was a real tough job for him. Looking at this from around the corner was a dog. Yeah, we sometimes had dogs. It wasn't always bugs and birds. And he's wondering what's going on. So he asks the bug, "Where are you going with that quarter?" And the bug turns around and says, "Well, I'm going down to the vending machine in that store. Buy me one of those," and he gives the name of some kind of special treat. And the dog's standing there listening to all that. And in the next panel, the bug has gone on down the sidewalk with his quarter, and the dog is standing there as if he's talking to the reader, and he says, "I didn't have the heart to tell him that they went up to 30 cents. So, of course, we thought that the idea of a bug having that much money and trying to use it like a human being, we thought that was funny, but we added a little twist to it at the end. Well, I've got some more bugs, birds, and other critters coming up, but it's time for a break, and we'll be back in a little bit.
Home security is now available through Conway Corp. It's an advanced solution backed by people you know and trust. Customize your system with motion detectors, sensors, light controls, and more, all managed from your wireless touchscreen or mobile phone. It's an easy way to protect the things that matter and the ones who matter most. It's safety for you, powered by Conway Corp.
Well, we're back. This next example I want to show from our short-lived comic strip. It's about a robin. Now, some of you youngsters may not identify with this, but a long time ago there was a song about the first robin of spring, and it goes something like, "When the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along." Well, we assumed that some of our readers would be old enough to remember that. So we had this robin, and there were a couple of guys looking over the fence at this robin, or maybe a guy and a gal. And this robin was like this. He's on a skateboard, and the guy says to his wife, he says, "I always thought robins were supposed to come bob, bob, bobbing along, not skateboarding." So he's another cartoon involving birds, a bird. It was a cold situation weather-wise when this bird went out looking for something to eat. But he found something. And of course, I can't show all the panels, but what happened was he was looking for something to eat, and he happened to find snow on the ground and everything. He happened to find a frozen worm there out in the yard. And then he's walking along at the last panel. He said, "That's the first wormsicle I've had all winter." Of course, as if there was such a thing as a wormsicle. Another cartoon about a bird trying to get something to eat. I won't show it because it's too difficult to draw. But the bird has tried to get a worm off the ground, and he dove down, and he ended up doing a crash landing. I won't draw the whole thing. And anyway, the worm is over here hiding behind a rock, and the bird he's just about conked out from this crash landing, and he's thinking, he said, that does it. I'm going to have to get new contacts. We thought the idea of a bird having contact lenses would be funny in itself. Maybe not. Now as I said, we have bugs and birds, but we have other critters as well. And occasionally we had a snake. And one day we got to thinking, well, snakes, don't have arms or legs, so there are a lot of things they'd like to imitate humans about. But being without arms or legs, there's certain things they might want to do, and how do they cope with that? Well, we had the idea of this bird that really liked donuts, so he goes down to the donut shop and gets not one, but two, actually 3 donuts, and this is the way he carries them back home. Just happy as anything. Got his donuts around his tail there, you see. And then we had another one. I'm going to draw 2 pictures here involving either this snake or one of his buddies who's all coiled up. You know how some snakes, maybe most of them, like to get all coiled up like that. Well, in this particular strip, we showed 2 or 3 panels, and this snake gradually got up to this position here. He's going to go off somewhere. And as he's getting up like this to travel along, he says, he's thinking to himself, boy, it feels good to unwind. This term was sort of current. A lot of people use that, in a different sense, of course, but we thought we'd put a literal application in the case of the coiled up snake. And then, of course, there are frogs. And on one of our panels, there was this bird who was playing basketball, and a frog was on the other team. And here's this old frog doing his thing, blocking a shot for the basket. And this bird is thinking they shouldn't allow dogs to play basketball, or at least they shouldn't allow them to guard the basket. Not so much his height, but his hopping ability made him a good defender at the goal. Now, getting back to birds, every so often we used a bird who had a particular unique characteristic. One of them was a woodpecker, and somebody asked him how he was feeling, and he said, well, it's tough being a woodpecker, especially when you have a migraine headache. Well, there are a lot of other examples that I could tell you about if we had the time, but time has run out, and so I say so long now. Remember, you can contact Mr. Foy's Easel at conwaycorp.com.